It feels like it's doing a lot, when in reality, it isn't saying anything at all.
It insists upon itself, Lois. What? It insists upon itself.
What does that even mean?
So, you know that one show that you saw on your favorite kids channel that made you go, huh, maybe I'm too old for this? You know, that one program maybe on Nickelodeon or Disney Channel that made you realize maybe you're no longer the target demographic for this channel anymore. Well, for me, that show was Girl Meets World. I think I saw a single episode of the show and it made me realize Disney Channel was no longer the channel for me. But there's been so many people in my community asking me to watch this show and make a video about it, and I have to be honest, I was hoping to never have to make this video. So like I said, I never watched the show, but I always saw clips of it on TikTok and it didn't really thrill me anymore on the idea of having to make this video. There was just something about this show that just looked very unappealing. Maybe it was the fact that it was a sequel series to a 90s show, Boy Meets World, that I also never watched, or maybe it was because all of the out of context clips I have seen of this show were either really unfunny, really cringy, or borderline disturbing. But honestly, the unhinged clips I've seen did pique my interest a little. Like, I really just wanted to see for myself if this show was truly as horrible as people made it out to be. So after watching all 73 episodes, let's just say I have a lot of thoughts, and a lot of them aren't good. So let's get into it. This video is brought to you by my Patreon. So I made a Patreon because there were a lot of things that I wanted to talk about that didn't really fit on the main channel. So this video ended up being a lot longer than I thought it would, and I kind of went on a rant about why I hate Cory Matthews. So if you want to see me complain about Cory Matthews and talk a little bit more about the characters in depth, then you can watch that video on my Patreon. So Girl Meets World is a sequel series to the 90s sitcom Boy Meets World that was also made by Disney. Boy Meets World ran for 7 seasons and followed Cory Matthews and his family and friends as they navigate a bunch of different issues while growing up. So like I said before, I had never seen Boy Meets World. To be honest, I don't think I've ever even heard of this show before Girl Meets World, but that's honestly because I don't watch a lot of 90s sitcom. But while watching Girl Meets World, I realized that this show relied heavily on its association with being a sequel to Boy Meets World. Like most unnecessary Hollywood sequels, there are countless callbacks, references, and allusions to the original series. You get the odd old character from a 90s show popping up for a guest appearance to the sound of deafening cheers from the audience.
Cory, what? I'm concerned. What's there to be concerned about, Shawnee? That... Minkus!
And it honestly was so hilarious watching this show because every time they would do a callback to the show or have an old character make a guest appearance, I would have zero context for it. But I could tell that it was a callback just because of how heavy-handed a lot of them were.
Mr. Matthews?
Yes?
My mother says hello.
I'm never coming here again.
It's like the writers winking into the camera going, remember that? See what we did there? Which they did so often that it felt so self-indulgent and self-congratulatory. Because the creator of Boy Meets World, Michael Jacobs, also created the sequel Girl Meets World, a lot of the times the show feels like it only exists as a reminder of how great Boy Meets World was. Because the show premiered in 2014, I don't know how many kids watching it would have seen Boy Meets World, which premiered in 1992. So I guess those jokes were mostly for the parents. But they do it so much that it makes the show feel so insecure. Like they don't believe in the new material of the show enough, so they have to keep making references to the old show to remind audiences of the good old days. I think at one point or another, every single main character and sometimes even recurring characters from Boy Meets World made a guest appearance on this show. So it just made it seem like Girl Meets World as a show was incapable of being its own thing, and it just puts it in this position where it's always living in the shadow of its predecessor. Multiple times throughout the show, they straight up play clips and scenes from Boy Meets World, and honestly those clips were what made me realize Boy Meets World was a much better show. Like I kid you not, the first time this show actually got a laugh out of me was when they played a clip from Boy Meets World. So after finishing the show, I decided to go back and watch a couple episodes of Boy Meets World for the first time, and oh my god, is Girl Meets World just a horrible show in comparison to it. I was actually shocked that the same person was capable of making these two shows because of how huge the gap in quality is. Boy Meets World was actually funny and charming, and a lot of the problems I had with Girl Meets World, which we'll get into later in this video, aren't here. But also, while watching a couple of episodes, I realized just how many ideas, plot lines, and even characterizations Girl Meets World borrowed from this show. So much to the point where Girl Meets World feels like a cheap imitation copy of something much greater. And just to highlight how often they borrow from the original, let's break it down. So in Girl Meets World, Cory Matthews, who was the star of Boy Meets World, married his childhood sweetheart Topanga, and is now a father to two kids, Riley and Augie Matthews. Cory learns a lot about growing up in the world around him from his friends, family, and primarily from his teacher, Mr. Feeney. So naturally, in the sequel, Cory is a teacher who teaches his daughter and all her friends really big life lessons. Cory's best friend is Sean, who comes from a troubled home and a broken family, and is a little more rough around the edges than our protagonist, and they kind of feed off each other, one motivating the other to be good, and the other motivating the other to take more risks. Then of course, there's that oddball character that's super smart for their age and seems a bit diabolical. Oh, and who could forget the drawn out love triangle that went on for way too long? The show tries so hard to echo back to the good old days and just makes it seem as if what we're meant to be watching right now isn't good enough or interesting enough on its own. And then when you add on to the fact that what the connection they want you to make is with a much better show, well then at some point you have to ask yourself, why even bother watching the inferior copy? There's so many reasons why this sequel is so much worse than the original. Probably the most glaringly obvious one is the tone. This series has a serious tonal issue. The show whips you around and takes you from an unfunny joke to a serious issue within milliseconds. So Boy Meets World also tackled serious issues from time to time. There are episodes that deal with sexual assault, child abuse, underage drinking, but Boy Meets World also had to balance tackling serious issues with being a comedic sitcom. They actually had a lot of pushback from the network about introducing such serious topics into a comedy, but they did it in such a way where it felt like we were smoothly moving from one tone to the next. The jokes never undercut the seriousness of what's being addressed, and the intensity of the subject matter never sucked out all of the levity from an episode. We were able to hold both of those feelings at the same time. But in Girl Meets World, it feels like such a whiplash when we go from a blaring laugh track to a character talking in a serious tone about the repercussions of bullying, and it makes it so hard to take anything that they're saying seriously. Take for example this scene. So in the episode Girl Meets Father, Riley wants to go to her first school dance, which is the same night of some family cyclone trip that they always take. But Riley wants to go to the dance and asks her mom Topanga for advice because she thinks she'll give her better advice about stuff like makeup and boys than her dad would. And of course, Cory gets upset by this and refuses to let Riley go to the dance because he's an 11-year-old trapped in the body of a 30-year-old man.
I understand completely. I'm sorry you'll have to miss the dance.
Try again.
I'm sorry you'll have to miss the dance. Nope, same thing.
They do the overbearing dad trope with Cory, which honestly is so annoying. In this episode, however, Cory returns a test to the students, and then this happens.
Mr. Farkle.
A number 700. Huzzah!
You?
Pretty standard stuff for a Disney Channel comedy.
Yes, Miss Hart.
You failed me.
Why don't we talk about this after class?
Wait, what? Where's the laugh track?
What's there to talk about? You failed me. You think I'm a failure. There's nothing more for you to teach me.
Whoa, 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 whoa. What the hell just happened? Is this a bit? Are they being for real right now?
What, you mean I lost you both? Maya! You do not walk out of here.
Now, if you're confused about the sudden and unexpected switch in tone, you're not the only one. This is something that plagues the entire series. Characters will go from cracking a joke to throwing out a melodramatic monologue in the span of milliseconds, and it's just so cringy to watch. Also, can we talk about how ridiculous all of this is? Like, this isn't even a serious issue. Maya is so upset that she failed a test and is blaming Cory for failing her, and then just walks out of class? Like, what? Now, Boy Meets World does have a very similar tone to Girl Meets World. It can also be very melodramatic at times, but overall, at least in the episodes I've seen, I feel like they did do a very good job at balancing both comedy and more serious undertones. For comparison, let's look at this scene from Boy Meets World.
In our study of feudalism, I would like to focus today on the life of the serf. Mr. Hunter.
I don't wanna.
You don't want to what?
In this episode, Cory and his best friend Sean start drinking alcohol, and Sean continues drinking alcohol, becoming drunk and acting in a very unpredictable manner. It was this show's attempt at tackling underage drinking. See, in this scene, it starts off comedic, but there's an undertone of discomfort. Sean is normally outspoken, but he's behaving in a way very different than we're used to. So us, as the audience, pick up that something is wrong. Then it slowly builds as we realize what's happening. Sean's drunk in class and is acting in a very sporadic manner. This continues as the gravity of the situation becomes clear to us, about alcoholism running in Sean's family, with brief moments of levity woven in.
Okay? We agreed to stop drinking. I have. You obviously haven't.
What do you think that's about? I wonder.
And by the way, I happen to have been an adorable drunk. You should have seen me.
The comedy doesn't take away from the seriousness of the situation. It's like a small respite from the intensity of the scene, nor does this intensity come out of nowhere.
It makes me feel good. Hello? Hello? Is this thing on? I have no problem.
Okay, maybe we don't have to talk about this in front of everybody. Let's just go out into the hall.
Go.
It starts off small and builds so the audience can anticipate when something intense is about to happen, rather than it coming out of nowhere. These tonal inconsistencies and quick jumps honestly make it difficult to really enjoy Girl Meets World. Not only that, they would painstakingly walk us through their jokes. There are jokes in Girl Meets World that I think could work and even pass for funny by Disney Channel standards, but it's as if the show doesn't think we're smart enough to get the joke, so they try to explain to us and help us predict it. That by the time the punchline lands, it's already been 2 minutes of setup and the joke isn't even funny anymore. Take this scene for example. So based on the setup, we can tell what's about to happen.
I would like to hear about the beautiful flower.
I will tell you about the beautiful flower. It's a clown flower.
Whenever I am feeling sad in this world, I look at the flower and it makes me happy.
Oh, I would like to be happy.
Riley's naive. She doesn't understand that this clown's about to pull a prank on her by having the flower squirt her with water. So she earnestly wants to smell the flower even though Maya is telling her it's not a good idea. Not exactly hitting the top shelf of comedy, but it's whatever. It's Disney Channel, who cares? But instead of just letting the joke play out, they drag this out for so long. This joke, if you can even call it that, goes on for over a minute, and it just makes the whole thing less effective.
Look at the pretty flower.
Is she for real?
I try, and I try.
I'll take it from here.
You won't have to. Watch this.
I want to look at the pretty flower.
She's like a gift.
Yeah, just do it.
This flower is of the species Carnaceous inurfacius.
Where's it from? Where's it from?
Yeah, I just don't have the heart.
She deserves it. Do it.
Made in China. Look closer. Here we go.
Or this scene.
And when he wake up,
So the joke is that Maya always says that to Lucas to make fun of the fact that he's from Texas.
Natural cornucopia of the earth's bounty.
Have you ever even heard me talk?
So it's supposed to be a funny realization that someone from Texas actually does this. But instead of just doing the joke, they drag it out for over a minute.
What?
oh.
What? I know it's early, but my life is complete.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
It's so tedious, and I think the reason jokes in this show gets dragged out so much is to pad the runtime. I suspect that they sometimes might not have enough material to fill the runtime, so they just beat these jokes to death. Now let's look at a joke from Boy Meets World.
So pale. Exhaust. Is all lost? Donut in the sky. Yeah, we could do that in front of the class. But before we do, will you just please take a huge baseball bat and hit me over the head?
It's quick, effective, and actually funny. I also chose this scene because they played this clip as a flashback in the episode of Girl Meets World, and I kid you not, this was the first time I actually laughed watching the show. Now I hope you guys enjoyed that because it only gets worse from here. I was actually gonna rank these from least problematic to most problematic, but it got really complicated trying to decide which one of these were worse. So in no particular order, here's some of the problematic plot lines in Girl Meets World. Let's start off with the God's Not Dead episode. So in this episode, Maya finds a $5 bill on the floor and decides to keep it, but Riley condemns her and says it's a bad thing to do, and what would God think of this?
Put it back. This is my only source of income.
Read what it says, Maya. In God we trust.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Because everyone knows keeping money you found on the floor is one of the 7 deadly sins punishable by an eternity of damnation. So of course, because the show is pretentious, this is going to be a thing, where the whole episode revolves around convincing non-believers like Maya and Farkle that God is real and they need to repent. The funny thing about this episode is that it pretends that it's taking a very neutral stance, and that it's just presenting both sides of the argument, but the episode is very clearly biased. The B-plot literally revolves around Augie talking to a dead Russian lady in heaven.
Can you see me from up there? How many fingers am I holding up?
Something we've never seen him do again, by the way. And of course, Maya, the bad one, is an atheist, and Riley, the good one, believes in God.
You need to believe in things.
I might if my life was hunky-dory as yours.
Oh, so you're saying it's easier to believe when things are going well.
Things are going well. I just got $10 and this new purse I just lent you.
Then why won't you believe in anything?
Yup, completely subtle, no biases whatsoever. Cory gives the class an assignment in belief, because of course he does, and the group has to pair up to do research on Joan of Arc and Thomas Jefferson, which why Thomas Jefferson? They could have chosen anyone else, but just like most American history textbooks, this episode recounts a more sanitized version of Thomas Jefferson. No need to really talk about all of the slave stuff. He was just a really great man that held firmly in what he believed in, like the Declaration of Independence, where everyone is believed to be equal under God. Well, not everyone, just the ones that really matter. Okay, so I just want to interject here and say that in retrospect, I don't think I explained myself well. I'm not saying that we shouldn't learn about Thomas Jefferson because he owned slaves. I just felt like Jefferson didn't exemplify the message they were trying to deliver about belief the same way that Joan of Arc did, because Jefferson's belief that all men are created equal was inconsistent with the way that he actually lived, because he literally owned people. That's all. So Maya works with Riley and Farkle works with Rucas. Riley spends the whole time trying to convince Maya to believe in something, and Farkle tries to poke logic in Lucas's belief. Eventually they decide that they need to switch to get better results, but when Rucas and Riley pair up, they realize that because they both believe in the same things, they don't challenge each other. And well, Maya just misses Riley, so they switch again. This time Riley with Farkle and Rucas with Maya. They're better able to work together, but still butt heads on belief.
Why did my father assign us Jefferson? I get that he wrote the Declaration of Independence. He said we hold these truths to be self-evident. Is that what he wants us to know? That believing in something is just the obvious thing to do?
Not to me. A scientist needs to hold things under a microscope, Riley. That's the only way to really understand what's right in front of you.
Did you ever think that when you look through a microscope, you miss the bigger picture?
No.
And the episode completely derails from there. So Farkle doesn't believe in God, and he's pretty much the only person in the entire episode with that standpoint. Maya more so just doesn't care either way. I would say she seems more agnostic. She could go either way. But Farkle, being a man of science, is firmly depicted as an atheist, and oh boy, the episode punishes him for that. They spend a whole sequence with Cory, Rucas, and Riley pretty much dogpiling on Farkle for not believing in God.
Farkle, I thought men of science were open to new discoveries.
Look, people, it's simple. Seeing is believing.
So you don't believe that Joan of Arc heard the voice of...
God? First you'll have to prove God to me.
Okay.
Okay, I'm right, or okay, you're actually gonna
Take a
try
deep
to...
breath, Farkle.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
They do these really lazy analogies where someone goes, I don't believe in God because I can't see him. And then the religious person goes, you can't see air, does that mean it doesn't exist? And it's just not a cogent or convincing argument in any sense. But the religious person always looks so smug and happy with themselves afterwards that they just owned an atheist. And I think that's why this episode just fails so spectacularly, because the lesson they're trying to impart is that people should be free to believe whatever they want. But Farkle, the only firm non-believer in the episode, is never allowed to just not believe in God. It's never presented as a just thing. Even Maya, who is pretty much ambivalent to the whole belief thing, is depicted as a bad person for taking a $5 bill she found on the floor, and it's implied that if she did believe in God, she would do the right thing, which would be to leave the $5 bill on the floor, I guess? I guess by this show's logic, getting into heaven is heavily dependent on how much loose change you can resist picking up off the streets. The episode dedicates the entire third act to making Farkle look stupid for not believing in God. Cory goes on and on about why he thinks God is real. It's never just that Cory believes in God and is explaining why he does. It's presented in this way of trying to convince Farkle, and by extension, the young tween audience, to also believe in God.
What's in the apartment buildings?
I can't see that.
People, families, mothers, fathers, kids.
And beyond that?
The sky, the stars, the whole universe.
All of it. Every person, every child, everything out there. Everything we see and we don't see. All these shining elements of a force that bond us together. I like to think of that as a part of God refracted.
I'd also like to point out here that while not explicitly said, belief in God in this episode is about being Christian. It's not just about belief in a God, they want Farkle to believe in the God. I could almost forgive the episode if instead of pretending to be a balanced discussion on belief, that they just leaned into the indoctrination angle. Because after doing that entire speech, the episode ends on this.
I love you just the way you are, and I never want you to take a vacation from me again, and I will never try to make you do anything.
I said a prayer last night.
Can I say yay?
Don't pretend you're all about religious tolerance when your religious tolerance episode ends with one of your non-believers turning into a believer and that being depicted as a good thing. The episode is so clearly biased that one belief is wrong and the other one is right, but keeps trying to pretend that it's fine for people to believe whatever they want. It's also really interesting to me that the secular company Disney approved this episode. I don't think I've ever seen a more overtly religious episode on the channel ever. I cannot believe that this aired. For the most part, Disney Channel has always been pseudo-Christian. There are jokes and references made to God in their shows all the time, mostly for comedic effect, but I've never seen an episode on Disney Channel so overtly trying to indoctrinate children into Christianity. It's insane. And believe it or not even the worst thing the show has done. I also just want to say that I don't think that believing in God is a bad thing. The only issue I really have with this is that they never just allow Farkle to not believe in God. It's never presented in a way where having a belief in one thing over another thing is okay. The episode is clearly saying that not believing in God is bad and believing in God is good. This is not about tolerance whatsoever. It's about making sure that you believe in the right thing. So pretty much the minute I announced that I was going to be doing a video on Girl Meets World, I got a lot of comments about the infamous autism episode. This episode seems to be legendary among the fandom as one of the worst handled topics the show has touched on. So going into watching the show, I was looking out for it because, you know, how bad could it really be? So in this episode, the students took an IQ test and Farkle scored in the high percentile of geniuses. Farkle is officially a genius. His family and friends celebrate Farkle's official entry into geniusdom, and Farkle does further testing to indicate just how much smarter than his peers he really is. The test results, however, suspect that Farkle may be on the autism spectrum, and his friends aren't exactly thrilled at the idea that Farkle might be autistic. The friend group, especially Maya, is very distraught about this.
They want to see if I have autism.
You don't.
Let's go tell them you don't.
I might have a type of autism called Asperger's syndrome.
You don't.
They try their best to convince themselves and Farkle that he isn't autistic, even though Farkle seems to have made peace with the possibility that he is. Eventually though, we find out that Farkle isn't autistic, but that his arch nemesis slash love interest Smackle is. Smackle was disappointed with Farkle not being autistic because it meant that they were less alike, but all of his friends seemed relieved that Farkle wasn't. So there's this weird paradigm in the episode because the cast's reaction to Farkle potentially being on the spectrum was very openly negative. They were in denial, they very clearly did not want him to be autistic.
Check!
You don't do anything awkward.
Well, that's just something you do and you're gonna stop doing that. He's gonna stop doing that.
Narrowed interests. Going on about a subject even if the people he's talking to don't have a shared interest.
Check!
Farkle, we're interested in everything you're interested in.
Belgium 1831.
Stop doing that. He's gonna stop doing that.
Guys, whatever this is, I got it. And I need you to let that be okay.
Some people with Asperger's aren't comfortable being touched or receiving affection. They may struggle to fully understand emotion or love.
Check, check, checky, check, check.
Farkle, what are you talking about? You love Riley and me since the day we met. You married us.
It wasn't real. Ow.
and when it was revealed that he wasn't, they were all relieved. Contrast that with Smackle, who we learn in this episode is actually autistic. They tried to not make her feel left out or different, and even said that they could be friends. Smackle and Farkle start dating in this episode after she confides in both him and the friend group, and they embrace her and reassure her that her being autistic is fine.
You would have good friends here.
But I'm not good at that.
Yeah, but we are. Maybe if you were in a place where you had some good friends.
You wouldn't struggle as much.
So why the two very different reactions? Well, I think they wanted the overall lesson in this episode to be to spread awareness around Asperger's as well as destigmatize it, but the execution wasn't great. Because it's very conflicting that the friend group hated the idea of Farkle being autistic, but embraced and reaffirmed Smackle. And I think one of the reasons for this is, Smackle at that point was not a main cast member, so they had no issue making her character autistic, and that not being a bad thing. In a sense, she's disposable, so doing that to her character was less risky. Farkle is a main character, so honestly, not making him autistic feels like a cheap cop-out. They didn't want to change the status quo. I really think they should have just let Farkle be autistic. I think it would have let the message land a whole lot better. If Farkle, being a main cast member, is actually autistic, I think it would have done a lot to destigmatize autism, especially if the characters never really mention it in future episodes. Farkle would just be a regular character who just so happened to be autistic. I also think autism has dominated so much of modern media to the point where a lot of people's idea of how autistic people behave is so heavily skewed in one singular archetype, the loner, weird, recluse genius type. And obviously, autism doesn't always show up this way with people on the spectrum. But in modern media, autism only looks one way, and Smackle and to some degree Farkle really play into this stereotype, especially in the first season. But Farkle's characterization has changed a lot, especially at that point in the show. So I think just making Farkle be autistic would also do a lot to change people's idea on how autism looks. But the writers are too cowardly to really commit to the idea, and the characters in the show say that if Farkle were artistic, it wouldn't change how they felt about him, but that very clearly doesn't seem to be the case. Their reaction to just the possibility of Farkle being autistic was insane. I think they had a really good opportunity to really do what they felt like they were doing, but they just missed the mark entirely. It could have even fit perfectly into the lesson of the episode about not letting a label define you. Having Farkle be autistic, but not having his autism define him or be what makes Farkle Farkle could have been a really powerful message. That's why there's just something so pretentious and arrogant about this show. It feels like it's doing a lot, when in reality, it isn't saying anything at all.
It insists upon itself, Lois.
What?
It insists upon itself.
What does that even mean?
And the things it is saying is actually very harmful. Can you believe this show did a communist episode? And they called the episode Girl Meets Communism.
Riley, look at this and choose your next words very carefully.
Comrades!
I pledge allegiance!
Comrades of John Quincy Adams, unite!
Lightning!
Thunder!
Darkness!
Bunny rabbits!
From each according to his ability.
To each according to his need!
Whoa! We're commies! It worked! Yay!
There are several moments of my life spent on this show that I will never get back. So in this episode, the gang are holding an honor court to dole out punishment for students who misbehaved, and for some reason, the court is being overseen by Cory, because of course it is. And Rucas and Riley, among others, are on the jury. Maya and Farkle appeared before the court because Maya cheated off Farkle during one of their tests. Riley wants to give Maya special treatment and let her off the hook, arguing that by sharing Farkle's answer, Maya was able to learn, which is the whole point of tests in the first place.
Cheated is a word. You know what else is a word? Shared.
That small analogy of Maya sharing Farkle's test answers spun off into a whole debate about the merits of communism, with Maya, Riley, and Farkle becoming commies to prove that sharing resources is the way to go. But you know who hates communism? Cory. So Cory, for this episode, is a red-blooded American and thinks that capitalism is the nation's saving grace.
Riley, you're not going to find a lawyer to defeat democracy. I mean, not even if you found some hyper-competitive freak of nature super lawyer. Okay. I'm sorry you had to see this. Let's go.
He argues that communism strips people of their identities, they're no longer individuals, they're just part of a set and have to think and act alike.
Yeah, well, you certainly look like you're all in the same little group now.
So what if maybe we dress a little bit alike?
And maybe some of my study methods have rubbed off on her.
You know Farkle's methods? Dad, what's going on here?
It's just what you wanted, Riley. Communism. Farkle sharing his knowledge with Maya.
Like, literally. The analogy, one, doesn't really make any sense, but also this episode feels like the Red Scare episode. This just feels like American propaganda and indoctrination at its finest, because the episode is very firmly anti-communism.
100%. You get a C.
What? We get a what's that you say now?
How do we get 100% and get a C?
Because when you get everything right, but you don't do it yourselves, it makes you average. A divided by 3 is a C. Look at you. You're all the same. You're average. You're common.
And I think there's already so much misinformation around what communism is. I think so many people could not even define the word if you ask them, but we hear it so much, especially in American politics, oftentimes as an insult thrown to a politician that you don't like, who's probably more on the left-leaning side of politics. All of that is really stemming from the Red Scare and McCarthyism in 1950s, a period of time during American history where American politicians were falsely accused of being communist spies, which would oftentimes lead to them losing their jobs and being blacklisted. Like there was a full-on witch hunt for communists. Then we had the Cold War and the Cuban Missile Crisis, so much of American politics is inundated with the images and rhetorics about how harmful communism is and how it's a threat to the American way of life. And I think it's just very irresponsible for this show to feed into that, because so many people's understanding of what communism looks like is not even really rooted in Marxism. It's like the pseudo-capitalist communist hybrid political structures of countries like China. Countries like Cuba, China, and Russia, which had communist political parties, didn't practice the kind of communism Karl Marx wrote about. It wasn't a political structure where the state no longer existed and means of production were controlled by the people, because those countries were also authoritarian. There were groups of people who wanted to keep power for themselves, and so any opposition to the political party was stomped out, oftentimes using violence. Also, because those countries were authoritarian, choices were made on behalf of the population for whatever the government thought was for the best. The public did not have a lot of say, and a lot of people died and starved under those rules. So the type of communism this show is trying to warn people about is just this one thing, and I felt like it was really irresponsible for the show to highlight the failures of communism, but none of the failures of capitalism.
People didn't want to all be the same.
Without incentive, there's no motivation. Without motivation, there's no advancement. In a truly free society, we share the best parts of ourselves without cheating, because we get to learn who we are individually.
How hyper-individualism breeds and fosters inequality. Poverty, wealth hoarding, inequality, none of that was discussed. Cory never talked about how everyone not being treated equally leads to a lot of harm and a lot of people being taken advantage of. And it was just so frustrating watching this episode because, one, the explanation of communism wasn't right, but also it's like, yay capitalism, without any interrogation whatsoever. In Girl Meets World, communism is when you all wear the same clothes and act exactly the same. I just don't understand why they would even make an episode like this, and I can't believe Disney aired this. Also, this analogy at the end about why not being an individual is bad because your grade gets divided into 3 made no sense. One, if Maya, Riley, and Farkle are no longer individuals but one entity, wouldn't they share the grade? And two, an A divided by 3 is not a C. That's an F. How is he allowed to teach at this school? He doesn't know what communism is, hardly teaches history, and can't even do math. Anyways, this episode was crazy, and you know, at that point, I was like, this show is ridiculous and unhinged, but when I reached this episode, I was like, oh, this show is actually dangerous. I'm not even trying to be dramatic. This show, in trying to teach lessons, gets stuff dangerously wrong, to the point where I would not recommend this show to kids. I would go as far as saying this show is dangerous for kids. They literally had a whole propaganda episode in the middle of the season and walked away like it was nothing. So I feel like there's always been discussions on the internet about age gaps and how problematic they are. And look, I think that there definitely needs to be a nuanced conversation about predatory age gaps. while not restricting women's liberties. And while coercion and autonomy can coexist, I think that our conversations around age gaps should be focused on underage people being preyed upon by older people. So personally for me, if someone is 25 plus, they could date an 80-year-old for all I care. But like at that point you're grown. But a 15-year-old dating an 18-year-old, a middle school senior dating a high school senior, a high school freshman dating someone off to college, it's weird. So let's talk about it. So Josh is the younger brother of Cory. He also appeared in Boy Meets World. There was a whole plotline surrounding the pregnancy and his birth, and he makes a reappearance in Girl Meets World. Fun fact, in the series finale of Boy Meets World, Josh is considerably aged up and is played by the creator's son. I think they only did that so they could get his son in there, but in Girl Meets World, he's played by another actor. Josh makes his first appearance in season 1, where it's abundantly clear that Maya has a crush on him.
Look at all these kids. It wasn't that long ago I had kids around the house.
Yeah, just this morning, wasn't it, Dad?
Oh, yeah, you.
Boing. That's my uncle, Maya.
Sweet, I would be your aunt.
Everyone seems to be aware of Maya's crush, but nobody treats it as a big deal, including Josh. In season 1, I felt like they had the most normal approach to this relationship. There was no underlying subtext of it being okay for Maya and Josh to date. The relationship was depicted as being one-sided, that Maya had this really big crush on Josh, and that Josh likes Maya as a sister. She's his niece's best friend, so they get along and he's really nice to her, but he also constantly reminds her that her crush will go unreciprocated because he's 3 years older than her, and it would be very inappropriate.
I'll go to the party with you, Josh.
Still too old for you, Maya.
3 years. What's 3 years in the history of love? They found some caveman footprints, a man and a woman. They didn't know how old they were. All the scientists could tell was that they were holding hands. You know why? That was all that was important.
Wow, Maya.
Keep looking at me.
Ooh, you know what's really important is I have my first appointment with my campus advisor downstairs.
So at that point, it was a pretty normal interaction. Maya had a little crush, and no one encouraged her to pursue it. Kids have crushes on older people all the time, so I felt like their dynamic at that point was fine. Especially because at that point, Maya's crushes played only for laughs, especially in that first episode.
Looks like everybody's all partnered up except for little old us. Huh. I could pick you. Or I could pick you. Or I could pick you. Or I could pick you. Yeah, well, you see, you represent homework and no fun, while you are so handsome it kind of makes my eyes hurt.
Okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be the game show host is what I'm gonna do. Because they stand. And they move. Hiya, partner.
Oh, boy.
I never got the impression that this relationship was going to be taken seriously, or even that Maya was madly in love with him. You know, it just looked like a little crush. Now, it's important to note that in season 1, Maya is 14 years old and Josh is 17 years old. He's a junior in high school, and she's still in middle school. So, very not okay for them to be dating. But again, at that point, everything's pretty much above board. That all changes later in the season, where Maya is a lot more flirtatious with Josh, and it's no longer played for laughs. Maya's attraction to Josh is depicted as something really serious. It's the first time that the show actually asks us to consider the real possibility of these characters dating, and it's weird. Because Josh doesn't reciprocate Maya's feelings, saying that he's too old for her. Maya says it's just a 3-year age gap and it's not a big deal. But then the episode kind of punishes Josh for turning down Maya's advances. In the episode, he meets a girl who's in college who coincidentally is 3 years older than him. She turns him down, saying that she's too old for him, and he says a 3-year age gap isn't a big deal.
Sophie, I thought we connected pretty well.
I'm gonna be a junior. Junior? I got a couple years on you, don't I?
Yeah, what's 3 years? You think 3 years matters at our age?
Yeah, I do.
So the episode insinuates that Josh should date Maya by flipping it around and showing him what it feels like when someone turns him down just because of a stupid 3-year age gap.
What?
She pulled that 3 years older thing on you, huh?
Yeah. I really put myself out there.
Oh, I'm sure I couldn't possibly identify with your pain. Cavemen, footprints, old hands.
Hurts, doesn't it?
A little bit, yeah.
How do you deal with it?
Well, me, I've got this dungeon of sadness.
Oh, yeah? Yeah, you got me in there?
Oh, yeah. You and a whole flock of ballerinas.
And it was a crazy realization that the show was actually going to make this a thing. This isn't just a running gag anymore. They actually want to do a storyline about Josh reciprocating Maya's feelings, even though they continuously acknowledge how inappropriate it is. Because it's not even that they don't know that the age gap is problematic, they constantly acknowledge it. And it's pretty much the only reason Josh gives us to why he can't date Maya. But they're choosing to ignore that and play into the idea that this would actually be a good thing. And oh, it gets so much worse from here. Because by season 2, they completely throw out any misgivings about the Maya-Josh relationship and fully lean into the idea of them dating. In season 2, there's this episode where Josh finds out that he's been accepted to NYU, which means he'll be moving to New York for college. Maya is trying to play it cool and be more aloof, and is essentially trying to appear more mature for her age, so that Josh would notice her and consider dating her. And it kind of works?
Hey, family!
Yeah, hi, I don't care.
My brother. My brother.
So, Riley, shouldn't we be, like, heading to school now since there's nothing here for me of any interest?
Sure, let's go.
Good luck, Josh. Yeah, hi, I don't care.
Is it just me, or is there a new maturity in Maya that I haven't seen before? I find it intriguing.
So they're going full speed with this idea, and the show no longer highlights the problematic age gap. The issue is no longer that Maya is too young for Josh. Now the depiction is Josh isn't taking Maya and her feelings seriously, and that's a bad thing. So Josh is going to a college party that night to get a feel of the school, and Maya and Riley sneak out to go to the party to keep Josh from falling for any mature college girls.
Maya? Riley? You know these girls, Josh? How you doing?
We're in middle school.
Oh, they can't be here, Josh. No kidding. Riley, what are you thinking? You have to go.
And I just want to point out something here. That guy isn't considerably older than Josh. He's probably a year older, if that, and the show highlights how inappropriate it is for him to flirt with Maya and Riley, because they're in middle school, and he's in college. But they stopped doing that for Maya and Josh. They don't want the audience to think of the Maya-Josh relationship in the same way as that character hitting on a middle school girl. There has to be a difference, because the show wants you to ship these characters. Even if they never actually go through with it, they want you to think that they might go through with it. So they no longer highlight how Maya and Josh's age gap is inappropriate. And there's a lot of ways they ease the audience into being okay with this ship. The other characters in this episode reprimand Josh for not reciprocating Maya's feelings.
Yeah, Maya, you don't even really know me.
Yeah, you're right. I don't pay attention to anything you do. I don't know that you drive from Philadelphia to New York, not even looking if you got into NYU, just so you could open your acceptance letter in front of your older brother because you love him and you want him to be proud of you. And I see the way you are with Augie, a little kid who looks up to you, who you always have time for. And I know that even though you'd rather stay here with these girls, you're going to walk Riley and me home. Because that's just the kind of guy you are. I like you.
Dude, what is wrong with you?
The episode really wants you to be on board with this. They want you to feel comfortable shipping these characters together. Other characters in the show suggest for Maya to wait until she's in college for them to date. They call Josh stupid for not liking Maya back.
She's 3 years younger than me.
Sit down.
Yep.
So Maya's crush isn't a running gag anymore. She's really in love with Josh, and Josh needs to change how he looks at her and realize she's a lot more mature than he initially thought. There's something about so many of these episodes that feel very fanfiction-y to me. But like, if you told me this episode was written on a Wattpad by Maya-Josh shippers, I'd believe you. I think this was just a really intentional effort by the show to really play up the shipping culture among the fandom, because in season 1, they made it a point to say how inappropriate it would be for Maya and Josh to date back when Maya's crush was just being played for laughs. If they now want fans to ship these characters, then they have to make it okay to do so. They can't encourage you guys to make up ship names if the subtext of this show is telling you that that's wrong. They have to destigmatize this relationship. And so that's why there's this reframing of this relationship where it's not about a problematic age gap. It's about Josh's inability to see more in Maya.
He's 17 and you're 14?
Yeah.
That might seem like a really big age difference now. But here in college, we learn a really difficult math.
Yeah. And when you get here, you'll be 18 and he'll be 21. And the good news is that he'll be smarter because he'll be in college.
And he just may be smart enough to look at you differently.
His refusal to take her seriously, and that if he's able to do so, then that would be a good thing. And all of that's intentional so that you no longer feel guilty about saying you want these two characters together. So by the time we reach season 3, which is basically the ship season, they really play that up. Any hint at Maya and Josh being together is met with deafening applause by the audience.
I'm through playing games. I want to talk to you.
Who?
Josh,
What?
why have you let me hold on to your hand this entire time?
And look, this is fiction, so I don't necessarily think this is a really big deal. I don't think it's that problematic for them to put these characters together because this isn't real life. These aren't real people. But I just think it's funny that in the beginning they were like, this is only going to be for jokes and it would be totally inappropriate for this to happen. And by the end, they were fully telling Maya to wait until she's older to date Josh. In season 3, Maya and Josh's relationship hit a significant development. During the love triangle storyline, Maya and Josh have a talk where he admits to liking her. He finally reciprocates her feelings and tells her that they should wait and play the long game until she's old enough to date him.
I like you, Josh. It's you I like.
I like you too. And I'd never want you not to be in my life. So, how about we try this?
Boyfriend and girlfriend right now.
No.
Boyfriend and girlfriend eventually. You're not saying no. You have to say something.
I'll play the long game. Live your life, I'll live my life. I know you're out there, and I'm out there too.
And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but is that not grooming? Like telling the underage girl that dating right now would be bad and so we should wait until you're at a more socially acceptable age for us to date. Is that like not the textbook definition of grooming? They're reaffirmed that they're basically going to wait it out until it's not illegal for them to date. And you know what? So many fans of the show really like this relationship. The biggest pushback I see to this argument is that, well, the show never made them do anything, so it's fine. And it's like, yeah, but in doing that, Disney's kind of saying that grooming is okay. I think they should have just left this ship alone. Let the fans make this ship in their heads. Plus, you could also play into it by having Maya's crush for Josh be a joke. Like, it would have been fine. I just think it's really weird that they made this a thing. But like we discussed briefly before, one of the biggest components of Girl Meets World is the shipping culture. The show is very deeply attuned to the fandom and who the fans want to see together, and they always play into that to create buzz around the show. And of course, the biggest ship in the series is the triangle. So since Lucas's first appearance in the pilot episode, the show has always hinted on Lucas being with Riley and Lucas being with Maya, and the fans of the show are also deeply invested in these relationships. You know, shipping culture isn't new, you'll find it in pretty much every fandom, but the idea of who she's gonna be with or who he's gonna choose, this impossible choice that one character has to make between two very real candidates, is something we've been seeing a lot more of. I'd like to think that we have Twilight to thank for that. The Team Jacob and Team Edward fiasco of the late 2000s and early 2010s really led us up to this point. So when Lucas was introduced in the series, he was firmly introduced as Riley's love interest. Lucas first appeared in the pilot episode when Riley and Maya were on their way to school and they spot this handsome boy on the train. Riley immediately developed a crush on Lucas and thought he was really cute, and Maya tried to push Riley to make a move, but she was too scared and timid to do so. So Maya stepped in and had a whole conversation with Lucas where she got together with him and broke up with him in the span of a minute.
Hi, I'm Maya. You're really cute. We should hang out sometime. You make me happy. You don't pay enough attention to me. This isn't working out. It's you, not me. We can still be friends. Not really.
Opening the way for Riley to finally make her move. But Riley was still too timid to actually do something, so Maya had to literally push her into Lucas's arms.
Get me, so let's not think.
Hi. We were just talking about you. You used to go out with my friend Maya.
I'm Lucas.
I love it.
And Lucas kind of only served the purpose of being the love interest to Riley, especially at that point. His character was pretty one-dimensional, he wasn't fully fleshed out. He was really only there to serve the purpose of highlighting how Riley is growing up. He is the first boy that Riley actually had feelings for, her first crush, symbolizing her coming of age story. So in the next episode, Riley and Lucas kind of develop more in their relationship. It is still pretty surface level, there isn't really much development in that regard. They're just texting texting each other, talking with each other, and then in the latter part of the episode, they go to the library where they finally start to have real conversations and really get to know each other. Lucas confides in Riley about his dream of becoming a vet, and it's the first time where they actually seem to actually be getting to know each other.
Riley,
Lucas?
I've never told this to anybody before.
Yeah?
I think someday I might like to be a veterinarian.
That's cool too.
I delivered this beautiful palomino. I'd show you her picture, but I don't have my phone.
That's okay, just keep talking.
So the show seemed to have really been hinting on the fact that Riley and Lucas were destined to be together, that this was going to be the ship of the series. But then, out of nowhere, Maya and Lucas started flirting.
It kills me that I can't get to you.
Sorry, ma'am.
And that flirting kind of intensified as the season went on. And honestly, I felt that Maya and Lucas had more chemistry than Riley and Lucas. There was just something about their dynamic felt more natural, didn't seem as forced or as awkward. And it was the first time that the writers kind of introduced this idea of Maya being a real potential threat to the Lucas-Riley relationship. But I was still pretty confused about why they introduced this idea. I don't know, it just seemed like it came out of nowhere. To the point where I was like, how is Riley okay with them just openly flirting in front of her? Then there was that one episode where they were putting on a play, they were doing Romeo and Juliet, and this was the first opportunity for Riley and Lucas to share a kiss. Farkle jumped in and stole Lucas's moment.
Yeah, I saw the whole thing. I just can't believe that little guy stole my moment. Again.
You thought that was your moment?
No.
Oh.
My moment will be my moment.
So that kind of set the tone for their relationship. Riley really liking Lucas, Lucas also seemingly reciprocating Riley's feelings, but none of them really at the point where they're ready to act on it. And pretty much for the rest of the season, there was no further development into that romantic aspect of their relationship. So nothing was really happening in that regard until the season finale, when Lucas finally asked Riley out on a date. Well, actually, Riley wanted to go to the dance with Lucas, but was scared to ask him, so Maya asked Lucas out first just to show her how easy it was.
Hey, Ranger Rick.
Hey, other one.
You want to go out with me?
What?
You want to take me to a movie and put our hands in the popcorn at the same time and see what happens, or what? Okay, you and me, because I don't care.
And man, were they really playing into the Maya-Lucas ship at this point. Lucas really wants to go to the dance with Maya, but first wants to get permission from her parents. Cory agrees to allow Riley to go to the dance under the condition that it's a double date, meaning that Maya would have to also go to the dance with Farkle. On their way to the dance, Maya gets distraught about Josh not reciprocating her feelings, so Riley tries to console her on their way there. But Maya pushes Riley to be with Lucas, and they share a kiss at the end of the episode.
You know those moments that we were talking about that we're going to remember forever?
Yeah?
And pretty much nothing becomes of this relationship until season 2, where they're finally confronted about how to define their relationship, whether or not they're dating or if they're just going to be friends. The rest of the school is also very invested in their relationship and how they'll define it, whether or not they'll actually start dating. And it's a not so subtle nod to the real life fandom and how ravenous they were about this ship. So it kind of forces Riley and Lucas to sit down and actually try to figure out what their relationship is going to be. But when they started to hang out, they realized that it was very hard to talk to each other and that the pressure of being in a relationship made it very awkward for them. So they decided to break up and just be friends, and that made it a lot easier for them to interact and be around each other. Then there was this huge development where one of Lucas's old friend from Texas started going to the school. Zay kind of reveals a bit of Lucas's backstory and how he had a really troubled past, and this kind of angered Riley because 1, he kept this supposed dark secret from her, and 2, she was now doubting whether or not the first guy that she actually liked was worth liking in the first place.
Tell me what you
did.
Nothing this bad.
But we come to find out that Lucas's dark past is essentially him having an uncontrollable anger problem. He would get into fights trying to defend his friends.
I couldn't help notice your pointy boots. Back in Texas, we appreciate a nice pointy boot. They can end a fight real quick. Unless somebody knows to put his heel in the soft part where all your toes are. Ow. Now I'm sure you like throw punch. Except I got both your wrists and I'm as strong as a horse. I don't even work at it, I just am.
Somebody give me a chair.
Which is just so Wattpad fanfic core. It's insane. So anyways, after that happens, there wasn't really any meaningful development into either of these relationships. There would be some flirting here and there, especially between Maya and Lucas, but nothing really substantial. Then there was an episode where for some reason, a lot of people felt like Maya and Lucas were a better couple than Maya and Riley. And so Maya and Lucas were voted best couple despite them not really liking each other, or at least admitting to actually liking each other. And this understandably really frustrates Riley. Riley gets really insecure about the whole situation, so to kind of appease Riley and reassure her, Maya decides to act like Riley. Then there was just this out of place resolution where in the heat of the moment, Maya realizes that the reason why she, pretending to be Riley, likes Lucas is because she likes Lucas as a brother.
Oh, Lucas, you're a very sweet guy. That's why I always liked you since I fell into your lap on the subway. It's why we should have been favorite couple, because we're so much alike. You know, it's like we're two sunshiny people from the same sunshiny family. That's why I like you so much. It's like you're my brother. Oh. It's like he's your...
What?
Whoa.
What just happened?
And then they kind of come to the conclusion that Riley only likes Lucas as a brother. But I'm like, that's you. Like, you can pretend to be Riley all you want. You're not actually Riley. So I feel like it was crazy for her to just come to that conclusion because those were her feelings. And then to be like, oh, well, that definitively proves that Riley only likes Lucas as a brother. But I felt like that was just a way for them to kind of make it okay for Maya and Lucas to be together by introducing this idea that Riley's attraction to Lucas is simply based on like a sibling kind of love, which is just like... There was no indication of that whatsoever. This idea kind of just came out of nowhere. But I do 100% believe that it was intended to open the doors for Maya and Lucas to have a viable chance of being together. And again, we pretty much get no development in either of these relationships one way or the other. There is some flirting here and there, but for the most part, nothing really happened until the Texas episodes. So Maya and Riley signed up Lucas to conquer his childhood failure of riding Judy the sheep. But they accidentally signed him up for bull riding instead. And the bull that Lucas has to ride is infamously dangerous and very deadly. So the whole gang heads to Texas to watch Lucas ride a bull. And from the very jump, they really play into this idea of Lucas being attracted to both Riley and Maya. But while they're there and they find out just how dangerous the bull is, Maya and Riley become very concerned for Lucas's safety, but in very different ways. Riley still encourages Lucas to do it, so that he could redeem himself and earn his family's respect, but Maya threatens to no longer be friends with Lucas if he goes through with this.
Lucas, look at me. If you do this, I will never speak to you again.
Maya.
Riley, why are you for this?
Because I want him to succeed. I want him to make his grandfather proud.
And it's kind of depicted in this way of Maya acting irrationally because of her attraction to Lucas. Like she's giving him this ultimatum because she really, really likes him. Not just in a platonic way, but in a romantic way. But for me, my takeaway would just be, why couldn't this just be in a platonic way? Like, why is it so far-fetched that she would say this just because she didn't want to see her friend get hurt? But anyways, in the episode, it's depicted as her being concerned for his safety because she's attracted to him. So anyways, Lucas rides the bull and he survives, and Riley confronts Maya about her feelings. She realized that Maya was so concerned for Lucas because she actually liked him.
You couldn't watch him because you were afraid something would happen to him. Because you like him. You make fun of him because you like him. And you've never told me that either.
And now that Riley realizes that Maya has feelings for Lucas, she decides to bow out. She reinforces this idea that she only likes Lucas as a brother so that Maya wouldn't feel as guilty about liking Lucas. So Maya tells Lucas that they're only friends and that she only loves him like a brother and that she's his sister, which is just like, okay. So Riley tries to encourage Maya to go for it with Lucas and then just blatantly tells Lucas that Maya has feelings for him. So Lucas confronts Maya on this about her feelings for him and they end up sharing a moment.
Feelings for you, don't you think I'd just come right out and say it? Well, I don't, so what I do say is, ha ha.
Actually, the actor did say that they did film a scene where they actually kissed and one where they were about to kiss but didn't. And for some reason they chose to do the one where they didn't really kiss. And I think that's because they didn't want to close the door entirely on the Lucas-Riley relationship. I think if Maya and Lucas did actually kiss in this scene, then it would have pissed off the Riley-Lucas shippers too much. And they didn't want people to think that that relationship was dead. So things kind of become really awkward from there. Riley is still adamant about reaffirming this brother-sister relationship with Lucas, and in an effort to really play into that, she agrees to go on a date with this other guy, and Maya and Lucas themselves decide to try dating. But Maya and Lucas run into the same issue that Maya and Riley were having, where it became really awkward and they weren't really able to talk to each other, and then in the heat of the moment, Maya pours smoothie all over Lucas. But then afterwards, Lucas kind of confronts Riley about the whole brother-sister thing, and he says that he doesn't want to be her brother because one, she already has a brother, and two, they've already been romantically involved, so them being brother-sister doesn't really make any sense. I think he just calls her out because he can tell that she's denying her feelings for him. But Farkle realizes this and he calls Riley out on it, and he threatens her, actually threatens her, that if she doesn't come forward about her true feelings for Lucas, then he's gonna just tell everyone how she really feels about him. Then there was an episode where the couples kind of had a game night, and Lucas became really jealous that Riley's date knew a lot about her, and they kept denying their feelings for each other and not really wanting to address or resolve the situation and mess of their relationships. And then on the roof, when Maya and Lucas are having a moment, true to his word, Farkle reveals the secret that Riley does actually have feelings for Lucas.
Riley still loves Lucas.
So now everybody knows, Lucas likes both Maya and Riley, and Maya and Riley both like Lucas, and they don't know what they're gonna do about it, and thus the triangle is formed. So yeah, after that happened and the triangle is formed, they basically become a polyamorous couple, which is just like, this is a Disney Channel show, bro. So they're not exactly all dating each other, but Lucas doesn't want to make a decision on either Riley or Maya because he doesn't want to hurt either of them, and they both like him equally. So this weird dynamic forms where if Lucas gives one of them a compliment, the other one gets jealous and requires a compliment in return.
What?
I looked at Riley,
I know, I saw.
so I'm looking at you to even it up.
Oh, well, a girl always wants to be looked at to be evened up.
We're just friends, and I love your outfit. Hey! Your hair smells nice.
You smelled her hair?
And at one point they actually refer to themselves both as Lucas's girlfriends.
Hi. What's your name?
Lucas. And these are my... How would you like to be called?
A girlfriend.
And how would you like to be
The
called?
girlfriend, equally as much.
So anyways, in this episode, where Maya has this whole arc of becoming Riley, and the argument is that the only reason why Maya likes Lucas is because she's turned herself into Riley, and Riley likes Lucas. Anyways, the important part in this episode is that at the very end, Lucas says that he's finally made a decision. He knows which girl he really likes, and he's ready to make a choice. Except that was a complete lie, because even though he has made a decision, he has resolved this within himself, he doesn't tell us. He doesn't tell anyone. He doesn't tell the audience. They're still dragging out this plotline of the triangle, and it's so tedious. So anyways, none of this gets really resolved until the ski lodge episode. So at the ski lodge, Lucas is adamant that even though he's made his decision, he doesn't want to say his decision. He wants it to be a group decision because he doesn't want anybody to get hurt. And it's like, if you already know which one that you like, isn't it worse for you to just keep dragging it out? I don't think it's good to lead people on. Like, if you know that you've made your choice and you like one more than the other, then dragging it out is actually pretty cruel. So anyways, they all talk it out and they each try to imagine what their lives would be like with Lucas. But then Riley meets a guy at the ski lodge and that kind of throws a whole wrench into the whole situation. Lucas becomes jealous and Josh kind of confronts Riley on the whole situation. He kind of insinuates that the only reason why Maya liked Lucas and the only reason why she became like Riley to like Lucas was because she wanted to make sure that Lucas would be a good fit for Riley.
What I've also noticed, Maya, is that you've cared about Riley so much for so long that the moment she decides to care about somebody else,
Lucas?
you needed to protect her.
How?
You needed to see if she was safe with him.
Yeah, but how could I possibly do that?
Well, let's see, all right? You lose yourself and become like her so you get to know him like she knows him. Man, what a great way to see if he's good enough for your best friend.
And it just... This is the pinnacle of like lazy writing. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. But anyways, the resolution is essentially that Maya doesn't really like Lucas. She only thought that she likes Lucas because she wanted to be like Riley to make sure that Lucas would be the good guy for Riley. She really likes Josh and Josh really likes her. And Lucas finally is able to make his decision and tell Riley that he actually likes her. And that's it. I absolutely hated the triangle. I felt like it was very poorly handled. It went on for way too long. It didn't even really make sense to me for Maya to have a crush on Lucas. It felt like the writers just threw that in to appease all the Maya Lucas shippers out there. Or, according to the Girl Meets World wiki, the Lucas shippers. So, that's fun. They really dragged this storyline for longer than it was interesting, and when we finally get to the conclusion, it was incredibly underwhelming, and didn't even really have an impact on the rest of the show, so it felt like a really huge waste of time. I was never really convinced Lucas liked either of these girls in a serious romantic way. It just seemed like they were a really good friend. Nothing about this screamed romantic torture to me. I felt like they were trying to force this romantic aspect when they all felt better as friends, and also felt like such a missed opportunity to not include Farkle in the triangle, when he was the one who always liked both Maya and Riley. Why didn't they have him be a part of that? Like, he was right there. Also, at the resolution, Riley and Lucas start dating, which I felt like was the more boring choice. Maya and Lucas had way more chemistry in my opinion. But then when Riley and Lucas did start dating, their dynamic didn't change. We didn't really see them going on dates or even calling themselves boyfriend and girlfriend. They weren't overly affectionate with each other. Literally nothing changed. So they dragged out that triangle storyline for no reason. It all was just so underwhelming. They should have just forget the triangle and let them all be friends. But for the reason, they felt like they had to play into the ship culture. So that's it. That's Girl Meets World. This show was not great. I mean, there were times where I did really enjoy it, but overall, I felt like the writing was really bad, the plot lines that they touched on were really bad, and there were a lot of lessons that they tried to impart on young audience that I felt like were handled very poorly. Overall, I would say that this is the fault of the creator, Michael Jacobs. There's just something about this show that just feels like a boomer's rant. It feels like this show only exists to allow Michael Jacobs to complain about leftist commies and people not believing in God. I feel like all of the issues really do come from the fact that he was way out of his depth here. A lot of these lessons that they tackled really do feel like someone from his generation talking about them. But anyway, that's the video. Let me know what you guys thought about Girl Meets World, if you agree with any of my points. Also consider subscribing to my Patreon to help support the channel. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.